Welcome back to Behavior Shift. Today we're talking about a quirky but very real category of choices we all face, and that's called satisficing decisions.
Yep, and to explain it, we gotta go back to the 1950s, and talk about Nobel Prize winning economist Herb Simon, who coined the term satisficing. And he argued that humans don't always optimize, meaning that we don't always find the best possible choice. Instead, we go with something that's good enough to meet our needs.
Good enough. So, in other words, satisficing is this idea of middle ground between perfection and paralysis.
That's a good way of putting it. And the kinds of decisions that we're talking about here, they're low impact, but high effort or perceived high effort. And it's where the stakes aren't huge long term, but the still we can take hours to make these decisions and use a lot of time and brain power.
Let's have some examples, Kurt.
Okay. So I'm gonna say this one and people might disagree with this, right? But it's like where to go on vacation or what to wear to a party or whether to try a new hairstyle like I do all the time, right? None of these are going to significantly change the trajectory of your life, but people often agonize over them. Hours of research, endless browsing, going back and forth, right? Asking 10 different friends for advice. That's classic in what we call these satisficing decisions.
I don't know, Kurt. I like my vacations, so to me, it feels like a vacation could have a pretty big impact on my life, no?
No, that's true, and I will admit that obviously there's variations on all this, but think about it this way: the difference between going to France or going to Italy, is that gonna really make a big difference long term, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Yeah, you'll have different memories, but they're gonna be good, right? They're gonna be there. Now, note there's always exceptions to the rule. I mean, you could happen to run into the Pope in Italy, and he might grant you eternal peace, and so that might make a long-term impression on you. But generally, thinking about where you have to go or where you're gonna go on vacation has less of a long-term impact than the fact that you actually just went on vacation.
That makes sense to me. I mean, your experience in Italy, your experience in France are both going to be positive, most likely positive experiences for you to look back on.
Yeah, and that's where I'm getting at. It's not you do wanna make a more of a big decision of, like, going to Washington, DC versus going on a safari for a month, right? They're 2 very different types of vacations, gonna have 2 different things, but if it's going to Washington, DC or going to New York City, both for a long weekend, and you're agonizing over the choice, that's where it becomes a satisficing decision.
Makes sense. So satisficing decisions often feel stressful, even though at the end of the day, the outcome doesn't make that big of a difference.
Exactly. And part of the reason that this happens is what, we psychologists call choice overload, right? We have too many options and this desire to maximize the outcomes, right? So that leads to, I have to explore every single one. I have to think about this because, uh, I wanna make sure I'm doing exactly the best thing, and that leads to what we call decision fatigue. And then when you finally pick, the decision, if you get into this, you're actually less satisfied because you've exhausted yourself in
Mm.
getting there.
So why do we do this? What's happening under the hood, like psychologically driving this within us?
So again, a few things. We've talked about a bunch of these biases, and some of these biases keep showing up over and over and over again, right? So status quo bias. We default to what's familiar, even if we don't love it, right? Confirmation bias. We seek info that justifies the costs that we've already leaned into. There's also the sunk cost fallacy. We keep researching because we've already invested so much time, even though we know it's not worth it. The extra, research time isn't gonna really make that big of a difference, but I already invested so much, I need to keep moving forward with this. And so all of these make these types of satisficing decisions more draining than they should be.
So, how do we overcome this? There's got to be a smarter way to handle it, right?
Yeah, so, we talk about 2 different strategies, right? One is to optimize selectively. If it's a big deal to you, like a once in a lifetime vacation, put the effort in, right? Gather info, compare, make a count, but make sure you're being selective about which ones you're trying to optimize. And then make sure that you're satisficing intentionally. So for everything else, set a rule. Once it clears the bar of good enough, I will stop my analyzing. I will pick the first, I don't know, Airbnb that meets the needs instead of scrolling through 50. Not like we've ever done that when we're trying to plan a getaway for our quarterly retreats or anything, but
As somebody who's scrolled through probably every Airbnb on the app to pick the right one, that one hits home. So, basically, what you're saying is we should, instead of doing that, we should be saving our power for decisions that really matter, not whether log cabin A is going to be better than log cabin B.
exactly. So critical decisions deserve optimization. Satisficing decisions deserve efficiency. Knowing that difference keeps you from wasting the brain energy where the stakes are just too low to really make a big difference.
Okay. So, big takeaway here for satisfying decisions.
Not every decision needs to be perfect. Sometimes good enough is actually good enough, and it's the best strategy because it frees up your time, your mental energy for the choices that really will make a big difference and shape your life.
Well, I'm gonna blame you next time I get a bad Airbnb, but with that, that's satisfying decisions in a nutshell, and I think truly it does make sense most of the time. So, we're gonna drop a decision quadrant exercise in the comments again, like we have in the last couple episodes. Scan the QR code or click that to try that exercise out. It'll help you understand what decisions in your life are satisfying decisions, so you can stop over analyzing them. Thank you again, as always, for tuning into Behavior Shift.
Yeah, and remember, sometimes done beats perfect.
Exactly.